Hello. You can. Okay. Hello. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. So very nice to meet you today. We are part of the webinar, which is the second in the webinar series of the Malé Declaration, in which we have the opportunity to be for the sustainable development in the Malé Declaration member countries. If some of you have joined since last time, which we have the opening by the Director General of SACEP, the South Asian Cooperative Environment Program, who actually collaborate with us at AIT, Asian Institute of Technology, the Regional Resource Center for Asia and the Pacific, and Vanessa Surapipit, who is the head of the Evolution Cluster. And we are very pleased to be working together with SACEP and other countries in the South Asia regarding the revival of the Malé Declaration. And so for this webinar, looking at the possibility for discussion in the topic related to the equality management. So yes, I'm very happy to see that many of us are now joining in, and please feel free also to send in any questions or anything that you would like us to know, or let the comments, and you have a possibility to fill in either in the chat box and the Q&A, particularly because for this topic today, the emission inventory for equality management, the latest development and pathway towards the regional database, we have a very good opportunity that the speakers are not only from South Asia. We have only one speaker today from South Asia, which is a bit different from the first webinar. But at this time, we are very pleased that we have the chance to learning from two other speakers from Europe at this time, and they have taken the very dedicated time in order to join us from their morning. The morning hours out there in Europe and in the UK. So before I get into introducing the speakers today, I just would like to review everyone that in this sort of webinar series we have started by what we call the mandate from what we call the Malé Declaration on control and prevention of air pollution and its likely transboundary effects for South Asia, or what we call in the short term Malé Declaration, which was adopted since 1998 at the meeting in Malé. By the policy dialogue that was held by the UNEP and the Stockholm Environment and the Asian Institute of Technology has the opportunity to, like leading and that at that time in order to enable the agreement of the intergovernmental meeting in Malé in 1998. So actually Malé Declaration include 8 countries at the moment, including Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Iran, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So 7 of these countries are a member of SACEP. So therefore, we have the opportunity to sharing whatever development that in each country has got regarding how to cope with air pollution. So since, as you realize that the Malé Declaration has already started already, almost 30 years, that is a very long agreement. We have in chance also conducted a number of different activities, and now it's in the phases now the phase of our activity has running into phase 7, and all the member countries will have the opportunity to revive the actions again, because as we know that many of the condition has changed, and in these things we have a part of our activity is that we should have more dialogue in is to reach out to particularly the young learners and the practitioners who may not be able to travel, and yet they will have a chance to meet the resource persons, the esteemed resource persons, in order to gain the knowledge that will help them to formulate the solutions. It's not easy in South Asia in order to bringing in the better air quality, as we know from not only from the news, but also from many research that has been conducted regarding that air quality in the South Asia is the top of the world. Not only that, we have the peak, the top of the Himalayan region is also in the Malé Declaration country of the northern part, but also by the fact that the South Asia is very, very important to many other activities, and it's like a, the population is very, very high, and the impact of air quality is so huge. And therefore, today we have our second webinar under the topic of emission inventory for air quality management. So when we talk about this topic, I have some discussion with some colleagues, and we by the fact that we also have had the latest meeting in Bangkok itself here about what we call the Better Air Quality Conference. And then I was reminded that, a lot of discussion has been going on regarding the emission inventory. And one of the key person that has many people has approached in order to learn about the development on emission inventory is our speaker. Actually, the first speaker for today has actually joined our Better Air Quality conference in Bangkok, and he's Dr. Zeke Clement. Zeke, if I mention the name incorrectly, please forgive me, Zeke. Okay, Dr. Zygmunt Clement is the senior the research group leader and the principal research scholar at the International Institute for System Analysis in Vienna. He has for a long time leading the pollution management research group, and he has also has done so many projects that we call the one that has very good tools that ESR developed is what we call the greenhouse gas and air pollution interaction synergies, or GAINS. So the GAINS model is the focus for today that we would like to learn in a very brief time, that Zeke will help to explain, and how they have been doing using and applying the GAINS model for South Asia. And the second speaker is Dr. Chris Malé, and Chris is highlighted. Okay. Yes, Dr. Chris Malé, he's the senior researcher at Stockholm Environment Institute in York, and he along with his team also has developed and apply what we call the LEAP model, which is the other tool, a very, very interesting tool that regarding how to understand emission from not only from those for the air pollution, but also combining with the as a climate pollutants. And how to get the co-benefits of those. And so we will hear more from Dr. Chris Malé regarding this. And the third speaker today is Dr. Sarat Guttikunda. Dr. Sarat Guttikunda is actually, at the moment, he work in particular in a very very interesting place out there in India, because actually Sarat has been I know him for many years back. Regarding that, he has been the researcher and modeler for the World Bank for the program in Bangkok that we have been have a chance to develop the equity management system out here in Bangkok as well. But today, since Dr. Sarat is now back home in India, in Goa, so he has run what we call the Urban Emissions Info, which is actually a very interesting platform. And we will learn more from him today. He's the founder and director of this Urban Emissions Info in India. So, and he also is the adjunct professor in IIT, Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. Okay, I will talk more about his profile later, but without wasting much time, let me start. Let us start our webinar learning from the first speaker today, Dr. Zig Clement, please. But before that, we have also. Sorry, Dr. Verma is here already? No. No. Okay. Can we have just a group picture before we start? Sarat, do you mind to have your camera on again, please? Yes, and we have Dr. Verma. Yes. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Just to complete that, we also, the program will be concluded with remarks by Dr. Ram Lal Verma, who is now with Clean Air Fund as the science manager. Okay, so yes, please, everyone, 5 of us, please give a signal. Okay. That's good? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then we will start with Zig for the first presentation, please. Thank you.
So please let me know if this is if you can see the whole screen. Presentation mode.
Yes, I see it.
I hope this is okay.
Screen.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning in Europe. Thanks a lot for the invitation to share some of the experience, tell you a few words about the GAINS model, and also share experience of giving 2 examples of application of the model in South Asia. My presentation will be going somewhere between emission inventories, which is one of the building blocks of the model that we are working on, and application of the model and how we use and how important. I will try to highlight how important is understanding of emissions. I will start with a little bit of it's a conceptual example of how very often emission inventories compare or not necessarily to modeling approaches. And I think this is not necessarily valid only for GAINS, but the official inventories that are often submitted, and these are also inventories that we compare to or look at in order to find information or validate some of our information, often provides sectoral information and has sectoral activity data, let's say power plant, coal, or even total power plants or residential sector total. Very often this published emission inventories or even submitted to official bodies inventories miss many of the details which are embedded in them often, sometimes maybe not if tier 1 type of methods are used and very simplified emission factors are applied because other information is not available. Various models like GAINS, like LEAP, you're going to hear, and what Sarat is going to show from his experience, typically would add and stack more information. This is just an example where in GAINS we add many different parameters, including production technology, abatement technology, and all information about emission factors at slightly higher level, a bit more information about efficiencies of different measures. This allows to connect to policy discussion, or at least understanding of the policy implemented on the ground, because certain technologies are needed to reduce emissions. It allows also to identify some of the areas that are possibly missing in the inventory. It allows also for a rather quick monitoring of progress, because policies can be reflected through changing information about abatement technologies. And we should not be shy and try to implement and do this kind of stuff, even if some of the information may be not yet available. In general, use of this kind of modeling approaches can help us to build better inventories over time. So that's one of the possible helpers to provide and build inventories. GAINS is a model that starts with building this emission inventory. This is a bit that is coming here as emissions, and we are creating it that bottom-up emission inventory, putting drivers in the model, also coal use or population, wood, cars, all of the typical stuff that goes in. We have our control module with many control technologies that are defined explicitly in the model, allowing to calculate air pollutants and 6 Kyoto greenhouse gases. There's also cost information that is quite important, but I will not spend too much time about that today. And then it's connected also to the atmospheric module that allows to calculate dispersion of pollution and eventually concentration of various species that would enable, and it is done in GAINS, calculate health impacts through exposure to PM 2.5 or ozone, as well as ecosystems. Some of these elements are not available in some models. They are available for some applications in different areas, as well as climate indicators. This mode of operation we call a simulation mode, because one can create different scenarios. So these emissions would be starting from some historical data, but we have also projections of all of those. So you can run this in a simulation mode in iterative way and calculate different outcomes depending on different scenarios, or maybe different versions of emission inventories. And you could compare that to policy targets that could be defined in different ways. They could be, because we have also this dispersion model, you could compare the outcome of a model to concentrations required by law, or limit values for concentrations, or you could compare progress in changes of different emission indicators over time. And you could amend then information about application of different measures. So you could design policies that would meet particular targets. As I say, these targets could be emission at a given point in time, or it could be concentration, or some other indicators like reduction of premature mortality. And you could also do the optimization mode, which is limited to some models again, but we are working on a broader application. I will come back to that at a very last slide at the very end of my presentation again. But that's very often used in many policy processes. And as I mentioned that, from Europe, and these are pictures from Europe actually that refer to the European Union and to this is the Palais in Geneva, that's the United UNECE LRTAP Convention, Long Range Transboundary Convention. Gains model is used in these policy processes to evaluate and co-design and help to design further policies. Typical model use, just a very illustrative sketch of how gains is being used. We tried to understand emission inventories. And so the model is rebuilding emission inventories or builds them in parallel, utilizing different activity data, or creates them for the first time if there is no emission inventories that could be compared. We are, as I mentioned earlier, projecting emissions into the future, assessing mitigation potential. So this is emission reduction that can be achieved over time, increasing potential to mitigate, introduce more controls. This is explicitly included in the model. This has costs. So obviously costs would be increasing with increasing mitigation. Emissions would be going down, costs would be going up. This can be explicitly calculated in the model. And then we would be looking, for example, for a particular place in this space, reducing emissions, achieving particular target of health impact reduction, for example, that will have a cost somewhere on this line, depending on the level of ambition. And in all of it, we always work with different national, local, international experts that represent the knowledge and bring in knowledge from the community, including both questions about the problems and supporting us with development of the data that is used in the model. This is many words on this slide, but I just want to highlight some of the key elements that many of you are fully aware of. Base year data, activity data, and projection of the economic activities, emission factors, policies, how to translate them into different measures, current application of different measures, and what can be done in the future. So these are the parts referring to the emission inventory. The gains model has some defaults before we start working with anyone, building on international databases, building on our own database of emission factors that draws on peer-reviewed papers, guidebooks, different gray literature, local literature, and we are creating then this database together also with colleagues about policies and what does it mean in terms of model implementation of technologies to achieve certain limit values. So it could be emission limit values or concentration limit values in power plants. It could be in transport sector, progression of implementation of, say, Euro standards or different types of standards. And this legislation is very important, of course, to define the space where we are now and the space of future solution. All of this is typically improved in the process of collaboration with the teams, as I said, local, national, international, depending on the project, where all of this data is improved, utilizing refined, better local information. The same applies to the element I'm not going to spend too much time on, although I will show results in a second. Some of the local models that are being applied can be used and connected and improve also the atmospheric calculation in the gains model. The same applies for the health statistics. Model has been applied in many different regions and continues to be developed. This is not exhaustive lists, but apart from European applications I referred to earlier, we've been working with the Chinese government. And there's a dedicated version installed there for the Jinjinji region. That's the region surrounding Beijing and the provinces around, where there's a lot of industrial production. In India, working with many different partners, including Sarat. We wish we could work more with Sarat, actually. But we work a lot with the World Bank, especially on the Indo-Gangetic plain, but also for Total India. Vietnam's been working with the Academy of Sciences, but also with the World Bank to develop and improve application for Vietnam and Hanoi city specifically. South Africa, project for South Africa as well as Johannesburg. This map shows actually Johannesburg and surrounding regions, not the whole South Africa. and more is happening. Let me give you a few examples, actually 2 examples. One of a project specifically focusing on Uttar Pradesh as part of the project on Indo-Gangetic Plain and Himalayan foothills that includes, apart from some regions, states in India, also Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. And then also a project, a very recent ASEAN region, not published yet, supported by Expertise France and also ASEAN Secretariat has been endorsing that. It's in the process of reviewing this, so I hope it will be published very soon. So let me start with giving an example how the work happened. It's really very few snapshots only of that work. But I mentioned first step, this emission inventory. IIASA has been working jointly with the local governments, supporting us in collecting data and having a dialogue about information, as well as the IIT Delhi, that the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, supporting to develop jointly the inventory and improve that inventory and not collect, but compare the results of the emission inventory, how they actually are used then in the gains model to calculate concentration of PM2.5 and compare that to monitoring data, working with TERI and also the government of UP, trying to having access to the monitoring data and improving the representation of concentrations, emissions in the first place, concentrations in the model, and that then allowed to provide a number of simulations for for the outlook for the next decade to reduce exposure to PM2.5 and support development of the clean air program in Uttar Pradesh. Some busy examples, I will just focus on few of them. This is just to show, not to go through this in detail, but to show that these are the typical outcomes. You will see, I'm sure you will see similar products of work from LEAP and from Sarat also with his tool, where there is a allocation of emissions pollutant by sectors. So you see here different key contributors. These are the products of emission inventories you are fully aware of. And here you see the total emissions in 2020, which was the starting year. I will not spend time because this is not the key thing here to discuss Uttar Pradesh as such, but these are the things that are being discussed with local authorities, of course, and local technical teams to provide solid input to all of the modeling work. And the modeling work needs to be solid because it can be validated eventually against some of the monitoring data. Emissions itself, it's possible to validate at an individual source level because of the measurements on sources, but it's very difficult to validate emission inventory as such. So it goes through the model, and comparison to model or some of the remote sensing instruments. In the meantime, satellite data becomes widely, or has become already widely accessible, and allows to support comparison of trends in emissions. This is very robust. Absolute amounts are a little bit more difficult, and also there's a difficulty to understand source attribution from remote sensing data, but this is what we need to do as well. This is showing total concentration of PM2.5 calculated in the model, and then also origin of pollution. And you see that within Uttar Pradesh, about 60% of pollution comes from the region, and then there is natural dust, and then the rest is coming from other countries and other regions in India. This is a very important insight from the modeling, because it shows how important it is to understand emissions from also other regions, not only from the region that you are focusing on. Very busy pictures, only to show that within the modeling, we have been looking into apportionment of and development of these emissions, of course, by high granularity and sectors, but then looking into contribution to total concentrations from different sectors. residential, mostly cooking, municipal waste burning, small industries, agriculture, including fertilizer and livestock, crop burning, and large industries, and of course, also transport. Now, these are very detailed maps, really only to illustrate that it goes down to that level, and there are separate layers of information that link, of course, to the emission inventory, and their quality is very important, and it's being validated stepwise compared to measurements. The product of that, one of the products of that, apart from emissions, is also the source apportionment. You see total contribution that includes both primary and secondary, so gases that would contribute to formation of PM2.5, to total PM2.5 population weighted in the region. That's the last bar. So that's about 65 micrograms of PM2.5 distributed by sector. And on this scale, on the x-axis, you see the contribution, local contribution, and contribution from neighboring states, the rest of India, transboundary, other regions, other countries, and the natural component. This kind of source apportionment will, of course, look differently from region to region. And if you zoom to local scale, again, will look different. So you see here key sectors like residential cooking, agriculture, ag burning, transportation are key, and depends, some of them are very local, some of them have a broader regional scope or origin. And on the right side, you see contribution of primary and secondary distributed. So the model allows then for calculation and better understanding of primary and secondary sources, which is very important in design of the policies. Due to time, I need to jump now to another example. That's the co-benefit of addressing air pollution and climate change in ASEAN, where we looked into updating or develop joint emission inventory. That was done together with our colleagues in France at CITEPA, and compiled recent data on policies, including both climate and air quality policy, and see where we are in terms of exposure, where we could go further in terms of mitigation of emissions. But the starting point was collecting best available information for all 10 ASEAN countries, so Southeast Asian countries. Now, few examples of the results. We looked into a trajectory of emissions. This is CO2, and then some of the key precursors of PM2.5, primary PM2.5, NOx, and sulfur dioxide for total region from 2015 to 2050. That was driven by IEA projections. Now, what you see here, the red area, is the impact of existing climate policies, obviously affecting CO2. So we tried to turn the clock back and put it at 2015 and say, what if these policies wouldn't be implemented? The top of that bar shows the total emissions that would have happened if neither climate policies, so the commitments to NDCs, nor air pollution policies, which is this yellow area that removes quite a lot of SO2, or is expected to remove a lot of SO2. What would happen is you see that from the precursors, emissions are actually not declining, but staying pretty constant over time for PM2.5, SO2, and also NOx, even slightly increasing. So the remaining emissions, in spite of the policies, do not actually decline, but they are kept in check in a way. However, that means that the exposure to PM2.5 is not going to improve. Fairly busy slide, but let me focus only on 2 points in here. 220, the light area shows people exposed to levels below the current WHO recommendation, air quality guidelines of 5 micrograms. That's very ambitious, of course, but that's about a quarter of population. And you see here in these areas above many national standards, over 15 or 20, even 35 micrograms, there's actually more than a quarter of population exposed in 2020. And taking into account climate policy and other policies that are currently in place, this would not allow to reduce and increase actually population exposed to clean air. It's still about a quarter. You see, population is growing, and still large population is exposed to high level of concentration. So obviously the question was, what more can be done? This green area indicates here, we did not look into climate mitigation scenario, but only looked into air quality mitigation scenario. It shows here there is a large potential to mitigate NOx, SO2. We also looked into ammonia and VOC and PM2.5, and that would bring, of course, concentrations down. Another way of illustrating it in the model is a progression here of population-weighted concentration of PM2.5. Current situation across the region, that's not telling very much because that's not really comparable to any of the numbers one measures. That's a population-weighted distribution across the whole region. But what we see here is that current projections towards 2040, with all of the policies that are currently implemented, that's with emission mitigation policies as currently implemented, that's yellow bar, basically allows not even stabilize that pollution. That, of course, varies a bit from country to country, but there is a significant potential for further mitigation that can reduce those emissions quite a lot. And the same chart that we had before, but there's a new bar at the bottom, shows a big change. These blue areas below 5, below 10 are increasing very strongly, and the black, which is above 35, is pretty much disappearing. So there is a potential. There's a question, of course, how do we translate that into action? And that's a very challenging step, but that's not the subject of this webinar. Possibly needs to be a subject of next webinars. So to summarize, GAINS offers a one-stop shop support tool that is a coherent framework for systematic analysis of emission sources, can be compared to emission inventories and should be developed jointly with other emission inventory community, and can support policy discussion because it includes also the other elements. First of all, connects to local data and local emission inventories, has the atmospheric modeling capacity that allows to build in projections, calculate impacts, for example, health impacts, often reasons to take decisions, and a good illustration of benefits of reducing emissions. I mentioned already works across scales. It serves also capacity development because it can be used by even inexperienced users to start with, and then you can grow with it. It's available free of charge online, but big benefits are there when joint collaboration is done between the team at YASA and interested parties, because of course, as with all models, it can grow to the task and to the questions. So we are very open to work with, like the example was the World Bank work, for example, where there's a direct connection to the needs of the local policy community and trying to address jointly and develop policies that are supported, evaluated with the model runs and connect to local capacity and local community. I wanted to finish with few comments from Europe, because very often the examples are, there's maybe a false understanding that the uncertainties are very low in emissions in Europe because there's such a long and really well-functioning institutions. Long history and institutions are very important, and very important is to create capacity to calculate regular emission inventories and evaluate them all the time. This seems to be pretty much a never-ending story, and the revisions are still taking place and happening even for past years. I will show some examples. But despite of these uncertainties, inventories remain key instrument in reviewing progress and compliance. And they are also key inputs, and also some of the models calculate them on the fly, like GAINS does, or like LEAP you're going to hear in a few minutes. So they are in spite of all of that, they are still very important. And the quality is improving all the time using measurement network that includes low-cost sensors as well as remote sensing satellite data. And in this integrated modeling approaches has become part of the process. There is a value that has been recognized by the policy community. Let me show you some terrible examples, really, you might think first, because the ranges are very large. This is a comparison of how countries report in the EU, 27 countries of European Union, reported in 23 compared to 21 reporting by the same groups of experts, emissions of SO2, NOx, PM 2.5 and ammonia. That's a relative difference for 2005 and for 2015. That's a study that took some time. Yeah, we completed it in 24. So we didn't have newer results yet for 2020 or just initial ones. But this was already established years, historical years. You see that in most cases, there are very small difference reporting historical data in newer product. But for some, like ammonia, where there's continuous development, like PM especially, look at the scale here. That's very different. And I will actually zoom here on PM 2.5. You see in some countries, there's been big change in 23 compared to 21 reporting for historical years, a factor of 2 change. And the same in Czech Republic. Now, a big question in the emission inventories in Europe is heating and solid fuel use, especially wood and coal. These are 2 examples, Poland and Czech Republic, where there's a lot of wood and coal use in heating, and that's still very uncertain. Actually, the gains model now compares much better because we were always off, because we always included condensable particulate matter, and Polish official inventories, the same is true actually for some other countries, do not include emission condensables. Maybe I will skip this slide. It's only showing how gains compares to, no, I will not skip, I will say one thing about it. How gains compares to the national inventories. Now, again, it looks like it doesn't always compare very well, but we have to note that 2020 is the very recent year in that work. There was still not very good last data. So the second bar that differs much more than the 5% that we try to achieve is, so 5% difference between gains and the national inventories. We are very happy if we get there. For some of the recent year, that was a COVID year also, there were still problems at the time. Looks much better now, but that's a continuous process of checking that. So emission inventories are uncertain. They will remain uncertain, but they have a great value of allowing to trace progress and change over time. The last slide is I would like to inform those of you who are interested to hear more about GAINS work and connect to the community. We are organizing a GAINS workshop. That's a hybrid event. You could come to IASA, to Luxembourg, or join online. There's some more information on this website. We will try to exchange information with those of users around the planet. And we will be talking about some new features, especially online optimization application that will allow to ask the model to calculate certain and find an optimal strategy, cost optimal strategy to achieve certain level of reduction. We welcome anybody to join and we'll be happy to share over these 2 days more information and would like to encourage anyone to provide inputs, not only as questions, but also as contributions if you would like to share them. When you get the slides, you will see some information about where you could see, some of you might know, the report of the World Bank Striving for Clean Air, or some of this work on Asia and ASEAN region also, as well as benefits of, benefits, cost of inaction reports that are country reports that were produced using GAINS. And I will stop here, used my own 30 minutes fully. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions now or take them a bit later, but I will not be able to stay until the end of the meeting, unfortunately. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Zeke, for this fully explaining and in a very short time with these gains and what the applications and how we can expect and also in a future prospect. Actually, there are quite a couple of questions, and you seems to have answered a bit of that, but still. They put a question in chat box, so I will just read out for everyone. Actually, this Professor Fahim Kokka from, I think he's from Pakistan, is asking about that, with whom Gaines team is in contact in Pakistan for data. And also he asked about the year 2020, which was taken as the base year. Sure. I think you have explained a little bit that.
I think that eventually we changed. So I was showing the 2020 as a calibration year because there was quite some measurements were done. Because of COVID, there was actually a lot of measurements done. And it was an interesting case in itself. But we have done also evaluation for other years. And eventually in the study, I think 2021 was used as a reference year then for development of future policies, but we also look into 2035. So the model calibration was done for particular years. 2020, there was a lot of focus, and the policies were developed for 2035. I can try to follow up also on some of the comments in because I stand still and try to write answers to those that I can.
Right, and also about agricultural fines. Was it included in the case of Ajit?
Yes, the agriculture fires are included, and we have been looking both at the bottom-up estimates coming up from understanding crop patterns, production, and what is recorded, what is understood from how much is remaining on the field, but also looked into different remote sensing products. So try to put it together and include best representation that we could, working also with IIT Delhi, and in other countries, working also with the community that is interested, reviewing also papers. We still, for example, I have not shown it, but we still struggle with understanding fires in a lot of ASEAN region, how big contribution. Thailand is one example also where agriculture fires are very, very important. But I think we are far from being sure that we understand them fully, both in terms of total amount of emissions produced as well as temporal distribution is probably pretty well understood, but the total contribution to concentrations is a complicated issue.
Okay, thank you very much. I think because SIG won't stay cannot quite stay until the end, but there are quite a few questions. I think we can follow up in that. Thank you also for adding in Q&A in which we will reply later on as well, because if you reply there, it's easier for us to fill in the answers later on without having to say it out. So in the interest of time, we will follow up for answering all the questions a little bit later. Otherwise, if she can say a little bit about, there are a few questions that has been posted beforehand about, I think you have already answers about uncertainties much, but in the question specifically that has been asked before, if I can ask now, is about that, how can countries effectively address data gaps and uncertainties in emission inventories? That was the important one from Sri Lanka, CA.
So one word on that, I guess we're going to hear also from the other speakers how they do this. Of course, our approach is that the Gaines model, like most of the models, would try to, by design, include all sources that we know that exist, even if there is no information readily available. But we will try to proxy that and build it into the system. The advantage is yes, it's uncertain, but it's very likely, and we know that from practice, that it's often much more complete. And this, what we use is then a comparison to monitoring data. So monitoring data and the fact that low-cost sensors now are being so popular and became so robust is a big asset that will allow us to better understand and reduce some of these uncertainties and also help to fill in gaps. I think eventually understanding that there is a gap and playing with a model is a good thing then and allows easier to maybe have a good guess on it. But eventually, I think we have to look back into proper institutional setting to collect information that is necessary. Identifying gaps is one thing, and the other thing is collect information on the ground. I still believe that we cannot run away from the hard work of collecting information and setting up a system to collect that. It's also very important for the process of evaluation of the policies. When the policies will be implemented, we need to understand what has been done and what it means in terms of change of activity and emissions over time. And here, emission inventory is one of the key elements. There's a growing amount of tools, including artificial intelligence tools, that would help us in many aspects, probably to, for example, downscale a lot of information and achieve better spatial and also temporal distribution of some of emissions. But some of the fundamental data has to be still collected, and I think it needs to be collected, as I said, also for the evaluation purposes. And last thing, the knowledge about emission inventories seem to be of different quality across different regions, and different capacity exists. So again, a plea for this kind of webinars, and more than that, like BAQ was a great opportunity in Bangkok to actually exchange, because there's so much capacity out there that we need to capitalize on it, and we need to talk to each other.
That's great. Thank you very much, Zeke, for these answers. So I hope that's sufficient for at the moment. Still a lot of questions that can be followed up. And Dr. Koka also raised hand, but unfortunately, I don't think you can speak with this webinar. We can arrange the other separate meetings later. Okay, thank you very much. Then we move on, okay, to the second speaker, who is already waiting. Dr. Chris Malé. Hi, Chris. Okay. Actually, the second speaker is actually from the UK, so also is still a morning hours for him as well. So actually, Chris works as a researcher at the Stockholm Environment Institute at the University of York, and he has support countries to identify, evaluate, and prioritize actions that can simultaneously improve the air quality and mitigate climate change. So he has been a member of the WHO and also technical advisory group for the global air pollution and health. So he has a lot to tell us. I don't waste much time now, so I pass on the microphone to him. Chris, thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. And I'm very lucky to be following Zig's presentation, because he's covered many of the key topics that I will also touch on. So what I want to cover today is the work that we at SEI do using the low emissions analysis platform, or LEAP tool. Similarly to GAINS, LEAP is not solely focused on the development of historic emission inventories. And in my presentation, I'm going to try and highlight the additional benefits that you can get from linking that emission inventory development in a tool like LEAP to broader agendas and challenges, particularly the integration of air pollution and climate change. And before I get into the technical details of LEAP, just to highlight the opportunity that we have from dealing with climate change and air pollution in an integrated way. Analysis by the European Commission Joint Research Centre looked at countries' climate change plans as they were submitted when the Paris Agreement was signed 10 years ago, and assessed how much the actions within those nationally determined contributions to mitigate climate change would reduce air pollutants and what benefit that would have to reduced air pollution exposure and ultimately to reducing premature mortality associated with air pollution. And they found that climate change focused plans could avoid 400,000 premature deaths per year globally if they were fully implemented. But more importantly, they found that increasing the ambition of climate change plans to reduce greenhouse gases would achieve substantially more air pollutant reductions if those climate change plans were increased in ambition to be consistent with limiting global warming to 2 degrees. The additional air pollution that is reduced from meeting climate change targets is so significant that the health benefits from meeting those climate change targets through reduced air pollution more than doubles. And over 1 million premature deaths could be avoided in 2050 if those Paris Agreement targets are achieved. So this sort of global picture that we can achieve large air pollution benefits from integrated action with climate change has been at the heart of the work that we try and do with a variety of countries through an organization called the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. With the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, we work with predominantly ministries of environment to support action on reducing air pollutants, reducing greenhouse gases, reducing short-lived climate pollutants in an integrated way. And South Asia has been a leader in this. Bangladesh was one of the founding members of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, and there's been excellent work that's been done in Pakistan, in Nepal, and the Maldives, some of which I'll touch on here. And Zig highlighted the importance of institutions in developing emission inventories. And before I move into the technical details of tools and data, I wanted to highlight that in using those tools for the development of strategies and plans on air pollution and climate change, we have found that it's very important that those tools are not applied in isolation of the other elements that are needed in order to move forward with planning emission reduction strategies. When we apply LEAP in a particular country with a Ministry of Environment, it's typically within a broader process for the development of a national plan on short-lived climate pollutants, or in the development of a nationally determined contribution for climate change. And the development of data and assessments on how much emissions can be reduced is a really key element of the process for developing that plan. But it also requires substantial coordination from an entity like a Ministry of Environment. It involves a lot of engaging different stakeholders, whether that's other government departments, whether that's non-governmental organizations, civil society, academia, to get the best information, to identify the actions that should be evaluated. It also includes the endorsement of these plans at a high political level, and speaking to organizations like financing institutions who could move the plan to implementation. So the assessments are really important in providing that evidence within a broader process. The LEAP tool is a tool that's designed to be applied by practitioners in countries that are interested in understanding where their air pollutant emissions are coming from or how it can be reduced. So a large part of our work is aimed at building capacity of people within ministries of environment, within local academic organizations, within NGOs who are interested in understanding how do they build a model of where their air pollutant emissions are coming from and how they can be reduced. And that influences the philosophy of what LEAP is and how it is applied. The LEAP, the Low Emissions Analysis Platform, is not a model or not a single model of a country's energy, agriculture, waste, industrial sectors, and what the emissions are associated with those. LEAP is much more suitably thought about as being akin to Excel. LEAP is a software that can be used to generate models of a particular energy system or waste system, whatever it might be, rather than being a particular model. LEAP now has about 80,000 active users around the world building models, not just for understanding air pollutant emissions. It's very widely used in energy planning. It is widely used in climate change mitigation assessments, and has increased in its relevance for looking at air pollution mitigation. And the majority of those applications are done without the knowledge or support of SEI. LEAP is typically designed, as Zig sort of explained, for the gains model, not just to look at historic emissions, but it's designed as a scenario analysis tool that can contrast different potential futures that represent the implementation of different mitigation measures, that represent different assumptions around the drivers of emissions, so economic growth, population changes, to understand how emissions might change under those different assumptions. LEAP doesn't have one particular methodology or data structure embedded within it for quantifying emissions for different sectors. It's down to the user to choose what the most appropriate methodology is for representing emissions from a particular sector, based on the data that's available and based on the research questions that are being asked. And this makes it relatively useful in places where there's limited data. It means you can get a representation of your emissions from major sources quite quickly and iteratively improve upon it as more data becomes available. It also means you can mix and match methodologies of different complexity for different sectors. If you have loads of great data on the transport sector, you can build a detailed transport analysis. But if you have very limited data on what happens to waste, then you can build something more simple for waste management. You can use LEAP at various scales. The majority of LEAP modeling is done at national scale, but you can look at city scale applications. You can look at regional scale applications as well, and I'll show a couple of examples of that. Zig highlighted how models and tools like GAINS stack on top of the core components of emission inventories, additional factors that make those analyses more relevant for policy development beyond just understanding or developing a historical accounting of emissions. And I think one additional thing that is really useful about these tools, in addition to adding in particular technologies, the abatement potential of particular technologies, is the ability to integrate across sectors. In a typical historical emissions accounting, the different sectors that you're quantifying emissions for are represented somewhat independently. But if we want to evaluate different policies and measures, we need to look across different sectors where they interact in the implementation of different mitigation measures. And within LEAP, we have the ability to look at sectors in an integrated way. LEAP is a demand-driven model. And so for the energy sector, we first characterize what the demand are for different types of fuels and for electricity. So these might be fuel consumption in the transport sector, industrial energy consumption, household energy consumption. And so we represent the emissions and the energy under our different demand sectors. And this then gets passed to our energy supply or our transformation analysis. This includes all of the sectors that are associated with supplying different forms of energy, whether that be electricity generation oil, gas and coal production, refining, transport and distribution, charcoal production, those type of activities. And this link is really important when we're looking into the future or we're looking at evaluating different policies and measures. For example, energy efficiency policies may be implemented in households, and therefore in LEAP we would represent those in demand, but the emission reductions would take place at the point in which the electricity is generated under supply. And so this link between supply and demand is really important within LEAP in order to be able to comprehensively reflect the impact of different policies and measures that we might be implementing. And we can also look at this integration between non-energy sectors and energy sectors. For example, if we have anaerobic digesters to create biogas from municipal waste or from manure, we can link that into our energy supply analysis to look at the contribution of that biogas as a renewable energy source. These the core of the LEAP analysis here results in a set of pollutant emissions that we then link to a module called the impacts benefit calculator that helps us quantify the impact of emission changes on premature mortality associated with PM2.5 exposure, as well as impacts on climate in terms of global temperature changes. As I mentioned, there's no one LEAP model for a particular country or for a particular region. And so the development of a LEAP model requires identifying typical input data. Usually demographic, macroeconomic data is really important, energy balances, energy surveys. Greenhouse gas inventories often collect a lot of the activity data that is needed. And then for creating different scenarios, having information around existing plans, policies, regulations related to energy, agriculture, waste, industry, as well as more broadly on air pollution and climate is really useful. LEAP is a tool that aims to produce outputs that can be relevant for different agendas. It can give you comprehensive information on energy demand and supply if you're a Ministry of Energy and want to understand how to provide energy for different economic sectors. It will produce greenhouse gas, short-lived climate pollutant, air pollutant emissions, and can look at the costs of implementing different policies and measures, and can translate the emissions into the impacts on health and on climate. And so I want to now provide two examples of how LEAP has been used in South Asia for integrated air pollution and climate change mitigation assessments to feed into different plans and strategies, one in Bangladesh and one in Pakistan. As I mentioned, Bangladesh was a founding member of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition in 2012, and there's a long history of trying to develop integrated air pollution and climate change plans. In 2019, the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change published Bangladesh's National Short-Lived Climate Pollutant Action Plan. And that plan was informed by a LEAP analysis developed for Bangladesh by SEI and the Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology by Professor Tanveer Ahmed. And that data set was built using national statistics on energy consumption, agricultural production, waste generation rates to get a historic understanding of emissions, to build a historic emission inventory, and then evaluated the impact of implementing policies and measures included within Bangladesh's nationally determined contribution at the time, and additional measures that specifically focused on black carbon and methane as two major short-lived climate pollutants. And that LEAP analysis allowed a sort of three-chapter story to be told to inform the national short-lived climate pollutant action plan. The first part of that story is where major short-lived climate pollutant emissions like black carbon and methane were coming from, and how those major sources overlapped with other air pollutants like particulate matter and greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. And what that historic inventory showed was that if you pick any major source of air pollution within Bangladesh, there are multiple pollutants being emitted: greenhouse gases, short-lived climate pollutants, and air pollutants. The largest source of black carbon came from household energy use, which was also the major source of volatile organic compounds, carbon monoxide, about 10% of carbon dioxide emissions as well. For methane, agriculture is the largest emitting sector. It's also a major source of ammonia emissions. We then represented all of the policies and measures that were being considered within the National Short-Lived Climate Pollutant Action Plan. These included those included within Bangladesh's NDC, and then an additional set of policies focused on major sources of black carbon, including agricultural residue burning, rice parboiling, vehicle emission standards, and things like that. And what we were able to show is that compared to a baseline emissions in 2030, the implementation of all of those policies and measures was able to approximately halve black carbon emissions by 2030, reduce methane emissions by about 40%, and reduce other greenhouse gases and air pollutants, showing that the National Short-Lived Climate Pollutant Action Plan had benefits more broadly than just the narrow set of short-lived climate pollutants it was constructed to reduce. So it could also reduce carbon dioxide emissions by about 20% compared to the baseline scenario, nitrogen oxide emissions by about 30%. And within the IBC, the impacts benefits calculator, we then estimated how those emissions were likely to impact ambient outdoor PM2.5 concentrations. We see an increase from about 50 micrograms per meter cubed in our base year up to over 70 micrograms per meter cubed due to increases in emissions in the baseline scenario that then reduced down not to the historic levels, but substantially reduced compared to the baseline scenario when we implement those policies and measures. And we're able to then quantify or to estimate what the likely improvement in health was: about 12,000 avoided premature deaths from ambient air pollution, and a much larger reduction from the measures that are reducing household exposure to air pollution as well. More recently, we have supported the Ministry of Climate Change in Pakistan in the development and implementation of their national clean air policy. And I think this is a really good example of how climate change and air pollution can have benefits for each other. The development of a national clean air policy was something that Pakistan included in 2021 in its nationally determined contribution as a contribution to achieving its climate change mitigation strategies. And so the development of the national clean air policy aimed to achieve the genesis of it was in a climate change plan. In the nationally determined contribution to mitigate climate change, Pakistan committed to developing a national clean air policy. And so there was an impetus and a motivation to ensure that this clean air policy had a benefit for climate change from the outset. The clean air policy is much broader than just the LEAP analysis. It includes provisions for how air quality is coordinated within Pakistan. It has information about air quality monitoring and air quality standards and targets to be achieved. But it also includes specific mitigation actions informed by an emission inventory that is regularly updated and informing on the major sources. And it's this part here around understanding the major sources of emissions and the mitigation actions that LEAP was used to try and inform. The mitigation assessment that was undertaken using LEAP first built a historic emission inventory of greenhouse gases, short-lived climate pollutants, and air pollutants for Pakistan, so that we were able to understand the overlap in sources between greenhouse gases and air pollutants. The activity variables for Pakistan were broken down then by provinces in order to estimate the emissions separately for each province. And this again linked back to the strategy for the National Clean Air Plan development. One of the provisions within the clean air policy is that each province should develop a national clean air, a provincial clean air plan to achieve the goals in the national clean air policy. And so having information on major sources and mitigation potential by provinces allowed that provision within the clean air policy to be more easily achieved. The historic emissions were then projected for a baseline scenario out to 2050 for both Pakistan and provinces based on demographic, socioeconomic projections. And 18 mitigation measures with specific implementation targets and timelines, some taken from climate change plans, some taken from national energy strategies, from provincial agricultural strategies, were included within the mitigation scenario. For that historic period, we were able to cover 2010 to 2021, where there was sufficient data available. We covered all major air pollutants contributing to particulate matter and to ozone concentrations, as well as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, covering greenhouse gases. And we looked at all major energy and non-energy sectors. I'll not go through all of the activity data included here, but just to highlight that the LEAP analysis was developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Change and the Global Change Impact Studies Center that develops the National Emission Inventory for Greenhouse Gases and is the technical institution under MOCC. And the activity data, where possible, was developed using national statistics, particularly the Compendium on Environmental Statistics that the National Bureau of Statistics compiles, and that was really, really useful in providing the activity data. We again had the same sort of 3-chapter story coming out of the LEAP analysis with some additional information by provinces. The analysis highlights the big 5 major emitting sectors of air pollutants in Pakistan. Agriculture, households, transport, industry, and waste are the top 5 emitting sectors when we look across all air pollutants. And that the emissions from these sectors, this is particulate matter emissions, are likely to increase due to population and economic drivers without the implementation of policies and measures designed to reduce emissions. Within Pakistan's clean air policy, there is the Ministry of Climate Change at the time wanted to identify one key action per major emitting sector. So 5 key actions across the major emitting sectors to achieve the to be included within the clean air policy. So you have vehicle emission standards, avoiding the open burning of crop residue, reducing the open burning of waste through landfill management, increasing waste collection, industrial emission controls, and clean cooking. And these measures could achieve a 25% reduction in particulate matter emissions by 2030, and a substantially larger reduction over the 2030s to 2040 if they are fully implemented. So we were able to tell that story of what effect the clean air policy could have. And so the key messages, I think, is that LEAP has been a very useful tool in processes for the development of integrated strategies on air pollution and climate change. And I want to finish by just highlighting that in the development of LEAP, which has not been led by me, has been led by colleagues at SEI's office in the United States, there's been a concerted effort to try and allow LEAP analyses to link to as many different types of development priorities that countries may have, so that in developing an analysis in LEAP for climate change mitigation or for air pollution mitigation, it's also possible to assess how it links to other development priorities. So LEAP is able to output multiple different indicators to understand how energy systems are likely to change as a result of implementing actions for climate change and air pollution. You can assess the fraction of renewable energy within your energy mix, and things like that. You can get gender disaggregated results for health impacts from air pollution. You can look at the time burden of collecting fuel for cooking, which is often a greater burden for women. We're increasingly looking at impacts in the agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector of impacts on biodiversity from different types of land use changes, other health impacts related to diet, health impacts related to wastewater management as well. And a module has been developed that looks at the impact on macroeconomic indicators of implementing these mitigation strategies. So linkages back to changes in GDP, changes in jobs as a result of a different climate or air pollution strategies. So I will stop there. Thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. That's coverage of all these application, and also the benefits that we can gain from using LEAP. Although it's a very short time for the presentation, so I'm sure that people would like to make it clear and also understand more. However, there's a question actually at the moment in the chat box saying about, is it correct to say LEAP build sort of energy emission story and gains check depollution, health, environmental, and cost-effective results? I guess this is the question came about halfway of your presentation, so I'm not sure that it's correct to say that, right? Because actually,
yes,
yeah, please do clarify. I hope. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. I won't speak for gains. I think Zig can talk about like the full functionality of the gains model. So I'll just speak to LEAP. So LEAP can definitely tell an energy story, and for many people that's enough. For many people, they just focus on the energy capability of LEAP. For us who are interested in air pollution and the impact that it's having on health, LEAP can easily be extended to include non-energy sources of emissions as well. So we can look at emissions from energy and non-energy sectors, and we can definitely tell an emissions story. And the example for Pakistan is a good example of what they were interested in, was the emissions story. Within LEAP, we can add in additional information on the cost of implementing different mitigation actions, to do cost-benefit analysis, to build marginal abatement cost curves for the mitigation actions that we're looking at. And we can add in the impacts benefit calculator that is attached to LEAP, an understanding of the health benefits of those emission reductions. The health impact assessment side is not as detailed as what goes into the gains model. We look at changes in premature mortality associated with air pollution. My understanding is that gains looks at a lot more sort of morbidity functions and things like that. So I think the health analysis is much more well developed in gains than it is in LEAP. But that's the sort of scope of the functionality of LEAP, I think.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think it has explained much that actually, if I may ask further, the question for say that he will look into LEAP in the future. But certainly, if I may ask, because you have done the helping two countries in South Asia, Bangladesh and Pakistan. So if I may ask that the methodology to calculate for the emission inventories, is that comparable or any equivalent to those in gains, if you may know about that, or I mean, just in case that in the future, can the emission inventory that has been developed and using LEAP can be integrated with gains in the future, if we want to do regional, a database.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't speak to the functionality of the gains model, and I encourage anybody to contact Zig if they're interested. So LEAP has a very flexible functionality for quantifying emissions from any particular source. And so in Bangladesh and Pakistan, the quantity and quality of the data between different sectors is quite different. Some sectors have more detailed data in Pakistan, some sectors had more detailed data in Bangladesh. We've also done a lot of work with the Maldives, which has a very specific set of air pollutant considerations, right? Waste burning is a really important source, or was a really important source of air pollutant emissions in the Maldives, with the Thilafusi waste island. And so in each region of South Asia, you will have particular sources of pollution that require particular sources of data. One of the nice things about LEAP is that the methodology for estimating emissions from a particular source in LEAP is defined by the user. So someone in the Maldives can think, right, I want to be able to build my data set so that the Thilafusi waste incineration is represented explicitly. Or someone in Pakistan can think, the provincial level is really important for air quality management. So I want to make sure that all of my sources and sectors are represented at the provincial level rather than just at the national level. Or I can think in Bangladesh that the parboiling of rice, which is not a major source of emissions broadly, but is a really important source of black carbon when rice husks are burned for the parboiling of rice in Bangladesh. I can think that's a really important source to me, and I want that represented explicitly. The nice thing about LEAP is all of those different considerations that you will have in different parts of South Asia can be represented explicitly in the model. It's very flexible in terms of what categorization of source sectors you have, what data you can use to integrate to represent those different sources, and how you can project them into the future. So I don't know the extent to which a LEAP data set that's been developed in a particular South Asian context could be integrated into gains, because I think it's fair to say there will be thousands of LEAP data sets in government, academic, civil society computers that have been developed for different purposes in South Asia and may have completely different structures. And for us at SEI, that's fantastic, because you want a tool that is appropriate for the research questions that we're asking. Does that answer your question? I apologize if that was unclear.
Yes, it does. Yes, thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, it shed some more light now. We can discuss more later as well. Okay. Interest of time, I'm so sorry. We have to move on. Yes, and we have the last speaker for today waiting already. That is the Dr. Sarat Kutikunda. He has a lot to share, I think, and I will not waste more time and ask pass on the microphone to Sarat, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes. Please do full.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to use a combination of presentation and on the website as well, because I want you to get a sense of various resources that are available to build emissions inventories. From the last two presentations, we looked at the tools themselves, the model that can be used to build the emissions inventory, then use them for pollution analysis and use them for health impact analysis and optimization and a lot of scenario analysis. But I want to focus a bit more on the data that goes into building that emissions inventory. Now, if somebody wants to build the inventory or maintain or an upkeep of the inventory, where does one go for it? So I'll use a combination of this presentation and my website as well. A lot of this, everything I'm showing you is already on our website. So please go and do take a look after the presentation. So till then, let me show you what we have online. So this is a quick snapshot of what is the fuel consumption pattern that we are seeing in India. I mean, if you look at the last 10 years, the coal consumption has gone up 54%. The diesel has gone up 25%, petrol has gone up 85%. So all this means is when you're burning a lot, so it obviously translates into pollution. You burn something, it will have emissions and it will become pollution that we have to breathe. And to corroborate what we're seeing in that plot, we looked at annual averages at a regional scale from TROPOMI for SO2 and NO2. These are good indicators. SO2 is a good indicator for diesel and coal, and NO2 is a good indicator for transport sector, again, diesel and petrol. And we can see that across the board at the airshed level, at the regional level, on an annual basis, the numbers have gone up. And these are columnar numbers. So these are really good proxies for what happened over the long term. On one side, we have the fuel consumption has gone up significantly, and it's increasing year by year. It is increasing, and we are seeing the same thing in the loading of NO2 and SO2 pollution. So it's a one-to-one correlation. We can't say that I'm going to burn, but my pollution is going down. That's not going to happen. You're going to keep burning without any controls. You will have pollution showing up in the pictures. We did a quick overview of what is the landscape of air quality modeling work that happens in India. I think similar works are also published for other regions as well. Very recently, one came out for Indonesia last week. So majority of the papers that we have looked at, and if you do a quick rundown of Scopus or Web of Science, any of those portals, what we noticed is a majority of the papers only talk about monitoring, okay? And when we loosely attribute this to the fact that it is easy to publish a monitoring project. Now you buy equipment, you put the equipment, you get the data, and you show some lines and saying, see, and then there's not of uncertainty in there, right? So whatever the equipment shows, that's the ground truthing. And sadly, 75% of the papers are all monitoring based. Very, very few actually look at primary inventory development and then primary pollution modeling. It has lots of issues, the computational challenges, technical background, operational training background. So all those things are missing. This is something that we've been highlighting in some of the air quality modeling work going forward. So there's a lot of scope for doing some primary emissions work. We have one umbrella program called Apna City Program, Air Pollution Knowledge Assessments. As part of this, both at the regional scale and at the urban scale, we build emission inventories using a lot of primary data. I will give you examples and what kind of resources that we are putting together for this. In India, but being in India, we do a lot of this work in India, and a lot of cities have these inventories already built, and they're on our website that you can download. But we're also expanding the same methodologies for in other regions as well. So each of these cities also have some form of inventory work that we have done. You can also access them on our website later on. Okay, so I will quickly jump to the website where we have lots of resources. So on our website, we host everything that we do. Okay, so if you, sorry, yeah. So on our website, if you go there, you will have lots of these resources that are available that I'm showing you right now. Please go and take a look. So very importantly, this is the land use, the landscape review that I showed you. And the resources that we put together for doing this, everything is online. Please do take a look. The resources, the inventories that we have built, both for all India and for a lot of the cities, it's also online. And we do maintain these with all the new resources that are coming about. These are model-ready emission inventories. I mean, they don't look as pretty as graphs and plots that you have seen in the previous presentations. This is raw data that you can actually use if you're into modeling exercises. And if you don't want to do a hardcore modeling, we have some other resources that you can use. And for this page was made primarily for India. So a lot of the cities inventories are also available for Indian cities only. Other cities you will have to either talk to us or just go to the search button and then look for them online. So a quick overview of these resources. A lot of resources are required for building these inventories, and we collated as much as possible on this portal. And going forward, whenever we find something interesting, we either download it and keep it at our portal so that you don't lose the connection going forward. But again, I strongly advise that you directly go to these websites, main websites, and access a lot of this. And a lot of portals have this website, something that Chris also mentioned. They keep them in a very, very different formats, something that's useful for them. We have to get that information and we have to massage it to be useful for our modeling work. I think that's where a lot of the emissions inventory work gets either stalled or gets cumbersome. But for us, it's very interesting to do, so we keep doing that. For Indian industries, every industry actually maintains these annual reports, and they keep posting a lot of information on each of these. And every year they have something new. So it is very interesting to actually go through these reports for each of these sectors and see what new is happening, whether in the activity level or in the energy consumption level. And I will give you one example for power plants. For power plants, we do a lot of work. Sorry, I think I'm jumping gun. So for power plants, we have done a lot of this work. We have a separate resource page for power plants. And most interesting is having the location of these power plants. It's actually the most easiest thing to find. And a lot of this is also available in the Google Earth format or also other shape files as well. And for India, most useful is this NPP, National Power Portal. And this has this dashboard actually has information on the installed capacities, daily generation rates. But the only problem is a lot of these reports that are online on this page, especially the daily generation reports, they come out in PDF formats. One has to do a lot of back-end work to make it more useful for our inventory work. But there are a lot of people who are doing this back-end cleaning work. For example, one of these websites is actually from Cicero. And you will find a lot of the data that's posted on this National Power Portal, daily reports, annual reports, everything has been nicely digitized and kept here. Okay, but this is again another raw form that one can start using these for a lot of assessments. Again, the beginning pages, the databases are all on power, but if you keep going down, you will find other sectors as well. So that's mostly on the power sector. On the residential sector also, again, this is one of the major contributors to air pollution in India, both cooking and heating. The methodologies do get a little bit complicated because in India, the diversity in the meteorological fields from south to north are very, very different. So we have to adapt a little bit of these methodologies. So we documented all of those as well on this page, various resources that are used and the methodologies that we use to build these inventories and how we used it. So we have a couple of papers which are published and they're very useful. They document the methodologies and how the methodologies can be adapted for scenario analysis going forward. So you will find a lot of this very useful. Transport sector is again another complicated place. 10 years ago, it was really hard to find information on how many vehicles are registered. Are they running on petrol or diesel or CNG or electricity? Can I have this information at the state level, or can I have this information at the road transport authority level? That was very difficult to find. But now that information is also available on this dashboard. Detailed information is something that you'll have to pay, but at the gross level, a lot of information can be directly pulled from this website. But more importantly, again, if you go back to the Cicero website page, this Robbie has been pulling a lot of this vehicle data also and posting it on his website. And you will have, I think, yeah, the vehicle registration numbers and going all the way back to 2002. And this is very, very current. And we can see how the evolution has been changing from the petrol cars or diesel cars. And then the new thing is about the battery vehicle operated three-wheelers, two-wheelers and cars, how that is changing. So a lot of this raw data is like really, really useful, but it takes a little bit of a donkey work to get these in the format that we want. Again, this is only from the perspective of the vehicles. Now, registered vehicles only. So you need to then understand, are these registered vehicles actually on the road? So you need to do some surveys. So for this, we formulated something called FUSE, Fuel Station Survey. It's a very simple survey, and we've done this in multiple cities across India. I still think it's not enough. We haven't done enough. Very few cities we have done. But a simple question, it's a full methodology has been posted online. It's a very simple 2-minute survey per vehicle that we do. Ask 3 questions to the operator: your vehicle manufacturing year, your odometer reading, and what kind of mileage do you get? And this is something which is on the on the dashboard or something in their mind or something that they can keep. They always keep track of mileage. And all of the numbers we immediately notice and observed, and then we note them down. And just this 3 pieces of information can be used to build, how much of these vehicles are being used by age, how the mileage is changing by age, and what kind of the in-use the vehicle characteristics are on the ground for each of these cities. So in economics terms, it's called survival function. So we don't have to blindly go with the information we have on the registered vehicles, but a short survey like this, we can actually build a survival function for the city itself, and that can be used to differentiate between a registered fleet and an in-use fleet. And then you basically continue to do a lot of the emissions inventory work. For vehicles, we need only these three things. You need the number of vehicles, vehicle kilometers traveled, something that we can pull from the survey, and your emission factor. So that can be linked to your mileage functions as well. And by age, by fuel, and by location in the city. So we can build a lot of these spatial, temporal, and fuel-specific profiles by doing this survey. But again, this is a survey, which means that it takes time, it takes effort, it takes coordination, but at some point, something needs to be done. But if you don't want to do it, there are a lot of average numbers available. General profiles are available that can be used and implemented for building this study. Now, so what we have done is used a lot of these data resources from multiple entries and build some city-specific stories as well. So one is the regional level, all India, we have an understanding of that. But under the Apna City program, we built stories for various cities. I'll give you one example of how we go about doing it. This is for city of Bombay. So we create an airshed saying, okay, what will be the size of the airshed that we want to work with? And this will be the influential area of all the sources which are contributing to the urban problem. We do a very high resolution WRF modeling. It gives us a good understanding of the meteorological profile in 3D. So that's something that we can use for chemical transport modeling. The inventory itself is, again, a lot of bottom-up work is done. The resources that I showed you, they're all tracked and used for building some assessment of what kind of activity is happening. But at the same time, we also keep track of something called on Google Maps. There's one API which tells you what kind of congestion levels are we looking at across the city and what kind of speeds are we looking at across the city. So it can give us an indication of where are the hotspots over time, and then how we can use that for temporarily formulating some of the inventories. Sadly, this one resource is a paid resource. It's not a free resource, but having this kind of information at the granular level can be really useful in temporarily understanding the emission and pollution profiles in the city. We also use Google Earth quite a bit. So once we have the airshed for a city, we look at grid by grid and try to understand where are the major activity hotspots across the city. And they can be really useful in putting a lot of inventory together. This picture is at least 1 square kilometer. It's very close to the port area in Bombay. And this is where a lot of cargo gets in and out. Now, the big cargo comes in, it's split into smaller cargo, and then on the smaller vehicles, it goes out. Very dusty area. Any given day, like 10,000 trucks are going in and out, but it's not an official spot. So when we do a quick scan of Google Earth going across the city, the airshed that we have defined, we try to catch all these different activity levels. For example, this is all the brick kilns, again, very unofficial. We know where they exist spatially because everybody goes there to work. A lot of people go there to work. So we have a general idea of where it is, but how much area is covered, what kind of activity levels are happening in that area is something that we can only do or understand by mapping it out. So we do a lot of these mapping exercises to understand the scale and the intensity of various activities across the airshed. So all these things help us build a better emission inventory, and that's something that we can then immediately take it to the chemical transport model. We do a little QA/QC, validate that against the monitoring data wherever is available, and then use that for understanding the spatial and temporal profile of the pollution and also source apportionment. From here, now you can take it to any level. Now, once you have a good understanding of spatial patterns, you can use it for a lot of other resources as well. For Delhi, for example, we have done a lot of this even more detailed work. All of this, again, is available on our website. You can go there. So one of the tools that we put together is to understand now what is the cost of inaction and cost of delays in reaching Delhi's target. It's a very simple Excel tool that we put together using two pieces of information. One is how much is the pollution that we are seeing in the city. Okay, so it's very simple as that. And we know the city has about 40 monitoring stations, and they have a good record of the pollution going forward. So if the same trend continues and nothing changes in the city, some things are still changing, but the pollution patterns are not changing so much. So if the trend continues at 100 micrograms per meter cube, so this is where my exposure burden is going to be. Now, again, in economics terms, everything under this line is the exposure. Now, I'm not converting that into mortality or morbidity or cost, but it can easily be translated that afterwards. Now, how much do I have to do in each of these sectors, knowing the source apportionment that we have come up with from the modeling exercises? So we have this information. So this is a good example of that. So we have to at least cut 50% of the contribution in each of these sectors to the city, and about 100% of the waste has to go, and 100% of the stubble burning contributions has to go. Only then we reach the India's national annual standard of 40. Anything less, I will reach the target. Okay, so this is a good way to demonstrate very easily without actually using any tools, a simple Excel file to demonstrate this is the current trend. This is the understanding of the source apportionment, the sources that are contributing to the problem. Now, how much do I have to do to reach the target, any target? No, if you do it more, obviously you will do more than, you'll go much further down. Okay, not just 40, but you can even reach like 45 or anything like that. Now, this is the cost of inaction. If we are not acting on the information that we already have, then it's going to cost us. So not doing anything, it's going to cost us. But at the same time, we introduce a function called cost of delay. If we just keep talking about the problem and not do any action, let's say 7 years, we just talked about it for some 7 more years. Line remains more and more flat, and intent is there to reach the target. Okay, my intent is there to reach the target of 40 still in 2040, but the amount of time I have to reach the target is very less. So the costs that we will incur for doing the same thing in 15 years against 5 years, it's going to be tremendously very different. This has been very useful for us to demonstrate the use of emissions inventory to understand the sources of contributing to the problem, and demonstrating the cost of inaction and cost of delay, accountability, bringing accountability for different sectors into the picture in a simple Excel file. Now, what we found is that people don't mind using Excel files. They don't have the fear of opening the Excel file and then doing a lot of these works. So we have that. So last couple of more pages and then I'll stop. For NCAP, the National Clean Air Program, 131 cities have been designated as non-attainment cities. For each of these cities, a lot of these data resources are needed for building emissions inventory. They're all loaded here. So one could just browse through each of these and start downloading them. As simple as these. Now, for every airshed, we cut the road density maps and we put them. If we want to spatially understand our vehicle emissions, we need to have some understanding of where the roads are. And again, officially very hard to find these kind of resources. A lot of open resources are available, but they're very heavy. Lots of data space is required. For each city, we cut them. Either you want to work directly in the shapefile you can download, or you want to work in a CSV file, you can do the CSV file as well. So like these, a lot of these resources are available online, so please go take a look. So another thing that we do is simple calculators. So these are calculators for understanding the emissions themselves. Before you get into big tools like LEAP or GAINS, you just want to understand the fundamentals of how an inventory is put together. for various sectors. We have these tools which are online. We also run courses depending on the demand that we have. And for transport sector, we have a lot more. Now, what are the fundamental equations for building this age mix patterns and things like that? If you get the information from the surveys, how do you use them? So a lot of these tools are available. So I want you to understand. Please go through them. This builds a lot of the fundamental knowledge that you need to build a emissions inventory. After that, you can go to all the big models and then do much bigger and detailed emission inventories. So with that, I will stop and then take questions. But more importantly, everything I showed is on the website, tools, presentations, any resource material that we can think of. So please visit. If you have any questions, if you think any of the links are not working, please let us know. We'll always be try to help you with any of the resources that are needed. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarat. That's very interesting. We have, bottom up, yes, emission inventory in India across all these cities. And I think people will explore further. I don't see at the moment a particular question to you. I think many people want to just go to your website. Certainly.
Please go to the website. We keep it very simple and straightforward for you to understand. And if you find anything complicated, I would like to know so I can go and correct it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sarat. We can talk more later, I think. And at the moment, because in interest of time, I'm so sorry that I did not bring you to the on schedule as much. But we have only 5 minutes left, and I'm very happy today to have. Let me do this with concluding remark with Dr. Ramrao Verma, who has been working in this position in Bangkok before I did, and he actually the one who did so many things with the Malé Declaration in order to make it continue. And so today we bring it back home in South Asia, and Dr. Verma is now with Clean Air Fund as a science manager. So I hope he can shed us more light into how we're going to go forward with emission inventory at least, and also for Malé Declaration, which is actually we found the most important point of air quality management is in this topic. And just to say a little bit, if everyone please look in the chat box to fill in the questionnaire for evaluations. Thank you very much. Dr. Verma, please.
Thank you, Vanessa, for inviting me to give a concluding remark on very important webinar where you invited the 3 renowned scientists to give kind of overview of the emission inventories and the challenges. The first one was the Jig from IASA. I mean, I must say, I know all 3 scientists very well in person. And the Zig has really introduced the GANS model, which is widely used globally for the policy making purpose. And he showed very good example of the Uttar Pradesh, how the emissions are there, and the special distribution of the emissions in Uttar Pradesh. And there's this the data is being used by the World Bank for the policy making. The second was from SCI Chris. Chris also introduced the LEAP IBC model, which is also widely used by many countries for development of the emission scenario and the policy based on the LEAP IBC output. And he also shown very good example of Pakistan, where the sectoral emissions generated and the scenario development. And the last one, of course, Sarat, who gave very good overview of his work. Like it takes maybe decades or more than decades to develop such a good website, and the Apana City program that contributing to the national clean air program of the government of India. So I think I really thank all three speakers, and they really give a good insight of the emissions. As you mentioned, I was working with Malé Declaration for a long time and coordinated the activities of the Malé Declaration. And of course, now I'm working with the Cleaner Fund Science Manager, and still involving with the Malé Declaration as a kind of core group member for which support the planning and decision making in Cleaner Fund. Sorry, in Malé Declaration. So I would like to bring attention to Sarath and other experts who are involving the development of emission inventories. I just highlight like two papers recently I came across. One was which was published in Nature Communication last year in December, uh, which was a work from Spartan Network. And they highlighted very important emission inventory gap, which is like especially in terms of black carbon, but that can be a proxy of PM 2.5. That the emission inventories, all the emission inventories, IEDGAR or other emission inventories, they are overestimating the black carbon, which could be PM 2.5 in the global north, while underestimating in global south. And similar observations were also made by another paper recently published by Professor Gustafsson, and of course, Jig was one of the co-author of that paper, which published in Nature Review. And that also highlighted that the emission inventory development is systematically underestimated in the hot spot or the emission regions such as India and other part of the Africa, Southeast Asia, where the emissions are underestimated, and which really impact the how you develop the policies, how you impact the assessment on health, climate, and other things. So those, if the emissions are not true, the emission impacts which we estimated on health and climate may not be true. And this is really highlighted in the last IPCC reports, where there's large uncertainty in the impacts of climate, and which is because of the emission uncertainty. So emission inventory development is really important work to be done. And of course, the Cleaner Fund is supporting a lot of work on the black carbon, and we have started in the ozone also. And we supporting the research work, especially to impact assessment on the climate, health, and also supporting the emission inventories improvement. Come to the point where one more point I would like to highlight before I go to Malé Declaration work, which we are doing now, that the many like in the countries in the global north as well as China, they decouple the development with the air pollution emissions. So, but in the global south, there is a kind of a perception. We know that, okay, if there is a development, there will be a pollution emission. But this notion of the perception has been changed by China and other countries who really work on the technology and the policies, and they really decouple the air pollution with the development. So this is really an important kind of context to bring in the Malé Declaration, which is the intergovernmental network of South Asia, where all South Asian countries are involving. And also this is how South Asia is a kind of hot spot for the emissions and the impacts which we can see. So last few years, we are working on to revitalize the Malé Declaration. And it was like for some time, it was the activities were quite low due to a lot of challenges. But last few years, we again starting to revitalize the Malé Declaration, and the starting to build the vision paper. We starting to look and the we also try to revise the declaration which was signed by the countries 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And over the last 2 decades, there's a lot of changes, socio-economic changes and the environmental changes. So there's efforts from the countries as well as the Secretariat, AIT and SACEP to again to revisit the declaration, and that include the development of emission inventories for the Malé Declaration. And we are really looking forward, or we are really working toward to use the GAINS model and the LEAP IBCC, and of course the emission inventory has just developed. So the Malé Declaration is now again like will prosper or will be very active in the coming years with a lot of changes in the institutional as well as the some what is called restructuring the Malé Declarations. So with that, I really thankful to all three renowned scientists to provide very key insights of the emission inventory. And also I like to thank to Vanessa and the AIT and my colleague, because they are my colleague who I used to work with them for a long time, for inviting me for this concluding remark and to this webinar. So thank you so much, Vanessa, and all participants for joining this important webinar. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Verma. Actually, without you, we cannot have this. And also, of course, without all the three speakers, it would not be possible to discuss the discussion today. So I highly appreciate the three speakers, and including Dr. Verma, to really participate, with speakings. And in particularly, I want to thank all the participants today, because you have been staying with us, and I'm sure that you will continue with the discussion in the region and even from outside. And also we try to see what is the best way in order to solve the air pollution problems. I think that's the key objectives of all these activities. And at this point, I just want to say that we will share I think first the recording and the presentations just need permission. I don't think Sarat has a particular presentation slides or files, but certainly you need to maybe you can see from the recording. If you have already registered yourself, you can receive these recording. And please also give us the post webinar evaluation by scanning in this on the screen as you see now, or we will also share this evaluation form later, but best if you can do it now, and please help us to improve our webinar and in all the ways, because we still have about 5-6 times for this series in this year. Hopefully we can conduct that so that we will also discuss in other different aspects of the air quality management, focusing on South Asia. And I'm very happy and hope to see you again at the next webinar, which will be on the last Monday of the month. So please put in your calendar. We meet again likely on May 25th. And the topic we will share likely will continue discussion, modeling or monitoring the issues that we need to sort out more. So all the best to everyone, and take care, and see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, all the speakers who still remain with us as well. Okay.
Thanks to you, Vanessa. Goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Chris and Sarat and Dr. Verma.